And we are live, guys. How's it going? Welcome to workshop 2 of the Introduction to Web Development, where we will be building the Netflix landing page. Sorry for the delay. There were some technical issues. I'm sure, hopefully, my video is coming out properly now. Yeah, guys, how's everyone doing? I'm just gonna stay around for like 2 minutes, just like that, and see if everyone's joining. If you're here, give a thumbs up in the comment section, guys. I want to see you. I want to make sure my connectivity, everything is fine so we can get started. Akhil will be joining us in the next 30 seconds now.
Awesome. What is up, guys? I hope you guys are doing great. It's good to be here today. I'm actually reporting from Malawi, guys. So, shout out, everybody.
This is going to be so much fun, guys. Cool. Okay, so let me not waste any time and let's just get started immediately. We've already lost 18 minutes, but I'm sure we'll wrap up way before the time we have. So we have another 1 hour, 40 minutes, I think. I think that's more than enough for us. So let's get started. Yay. Okay, I'm just gonna set up my environment quickly. I've got my slides open. And I've got my code base open from last week. So Akhil, do you mind just putting up the GitHub link on the YouTube chat?
Sure, I'm on it.
Awesome. Cool. So guys, welcome to workshop 2, where we'll be cloning the Netflix landing page. We're almost done with the Netflix landing page. We went through the basics of HTML, CSS in the previous workshop. And in this workshop, we'll probably go through some more advanced concepts and then finish our Netflix landing page. More about us, you've probably heard about us. My name is Harjot. I've got Akhil with me. That's our Instagram handles. Follow us. If you have any questions, we'll reply to you immediately. And the agenda is basically, we're going to jump right into it. I'm going to skip all this. Quick recap. CSS basics. We started with HTML where Akhil introduced us to HTML, and then we jumped into CSS basics where I took you through the basic syntax where so the basic syntax is where you add the selector, then the declaration in curly brackets. And after the syntax, we went through how do you add CSS into an HTML. There were actually 3 ways: inline, internal, and external. We'll be using the external CSS. And how we do that is by using the link tag in HTML with a relationship of style sheet, and you add the reference, you add the link to the file, which is styles of CSS. That's where all our CSS code will be sitting in. And then you can also add multiple style sheets by using the same link tag. You can add as many style sheets as you want. And this just helps us make the CSS code more modular. And then we went over the fav icon. So it's quite similar to linking a style sheet. The only difference is the relationship now changes into an icon instead of a style sheet. So if you look at my screen right now, the relationship is actually icon. So just note that, and then you can put a reference or you can put the link to the PNG file. So we already have the PNG file in the GitHub repo. You can use that to add a fav icon. For those who don't know what a fav icon is, it's that small little thing up there, that small icon up there on the Netflix page. So that's the fav icon. Cool. And then we went over selectors. We said that there are multiple types of selectors: simple selector, combinator selector, pseudo class, plenty of selectors. Due to the time limits and the complexity of other types of selectors, we'll just be going through simple selectors and maybe pseudo element selectors. Well, I don't think we need any other type of selectors in the Netflix landing page, so we are good with that. So we went to the element selector where we select the element from the HTML. So body tag, H1 tag, H2 tag, P tag, all these are elements. You get that element tag and you then add the CSS file in it, the CSS code inside the curly brackets. And then the second type was the ID selector. This was an ID selector. It basically uses to select a unique attribute inside the HTML page. So for example, H2, if you want to style just H2 elements, a specific element in the page, you add an ID to it. And then in the CSS code, you write the hash character followed by the ID name, and then you can write the CSS code. That was the ID selector. And then the best one is class selector. Why I like this is because you can use it multiple times again and again. So for example, if you want a standard font of 20 pixels, you don't want to repeat that style again and again in multiple classes or IDs. So you just create one class, LG fonts, and then add that LG font into the HTML tab, you repeat it. And how you do that is by using the class attribute in HTML. So let me just go to my code and show you what the class attribute is. So we used the class attribute inside the div, and this is basically adding all the styles, the banner container, that's the name of the class, all the styles inside this div. Cool. Now you can add multiple classes. That's another advantage of the class selector. And then you can also group selectors. So if, for example, if you want to style multiple style or tags, HTML elements together. So for example, P1, H1, and H2, you can just add them together, separated by commas, and then followed by the CSS style. Then we have the universal selector. This is a very helpful selector because it selects all the HTML elements on the page and adds the CSS styling to it. For example, if we want the entire, all the fonts on the HTML page to have a font size of 16 pixels, you'll use the star character followed by the curly brackets and then the CSS code inside that. Then CSS comments, shortcut is command / or control / if you're using Windows. And why you add comments, quite obvious, it's good practice. You want the other person reading the code to know what exactly you wrote, you know. And then we went over the div element. So Akhil went over the div element where he put a structure to the entire HTML page. So if you clone the latest code right now, I hope it's the latest code. I'm just gonna make sure it's the latest code. I'm gonna git push it. Origin.
Let me also just check my side.
Yeah.
I am up to date. So track pulling. I think we're up to date.
Yeah.
Just cross check.
Push origin master. Yeah, we are up to date, so that's perfect. So you'll be able to access the latest code base. So we added the various div tags that created a structure to our HTML page. And then Akhil went over the form elements. This helped us create the form inside the Netflix page. So for example, the input box, the submit button, all this is part of forms. So if you'd like to know more about forms, just type HTML forms in Google. You find so many different type of forms in it. For example, a checkbox, input box, the various drop box. So you can use that inside the form tag inside HTML. What we used was the input element. So inside Netflix, there's this input element. So I'm just gonna open Netflix as well on my side. There's actually an input element called email address get started, and that's what we used from the form element. And then we had the button element. And inside the button element, this is basically, it's quite obvious, it's to create a button, right? So the get started button, that's what we created as part of the form. And then we started going over the various CSS properties, the color backgrounds, all these type of CSS properties. We'll go over all these as we do the Netflix landing page. We added a CSS font to the Netflix landing page. And I then went over the box model. So every div tag has its content and has padding around it, a border around it, and then the margin. Let's see, so where did we stop? Let's just confirm that. So we actually stopped on box sizing. So we actually haven't gone over box, the div element itself. So let me show you something about a div element, right? So Akhil created various div elements, but we can't really see them on the HTML page. They're invisible. So let's actually make it visible. Let's work on, let's say, the banner container. Let's work on the banner container. Let's see where exactly the banner container is. So in styles of CSS, I'm going to create a style called a class called banner container. And inside banner container, I'm going to give it a height and width. So every div needs to have a height and width. Okay. So let's say 200 pixels. We probably don't know what it's probably invisible. So I'm going to give it a background color as well. And a background color of red, and save that. Yay. Okay. So that was actually the div element Akhil created. So as you can see, things are overflowing. I think there's way more things inside the div element. So I'm just going to increase the sizing to, let's say, 600 pixels. Okay. Let's see. So this is basically 600 pixels. All the div elements are inside the box, and we can actually visualize what the div element looks like. And to confirm that, I'm just going to inspect the element and see what's going on. So Google Chrome has a really nice tool that allows us to inspect HTML pages. So I'm just going to click inspect and go over banner container. That is banner container. And if we look at, it has a 600 by 600 height and width, but no padding defined, no border defined, no margin defined. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add padding and margin. So padding of 50 pixels, margin of, I don't know, let's say 30 pixels, and save. Whoa. So if you noticed, the 600 by 600 div element is inside, and then a 50 pixel padding comes inside it as well. So it basically extends the div element. It's not the true height and width. This is not 600 pixel in height and not 600 pixels in width. It's actually 650. That's because the padding is included inside the height and width, inside the HTML page. But the margin is not counted for this. It's always outside the div element. And if I add a border to it, so I'm going to add a border of 15 pixels, yellow, solid, save. And if you notice, the 600 pixels stays there. There's another 50 pixels and another 15 pixels coming inside the div element. So that's not the true height and width of that actual div element. And that creates a problem, right? You want to create a 600 by 600 div element, and it's not actually showing you the true 600 by 600 square, you know? So to solve this problem, that's where CSS box sizing comes in. So box sizing basically allows us to include the padding and the border inside the element's total width and height. So without box sizing, the padding and the border will be added as part of the width. But if the moment you add CSS box sizing, the CSS code, the padding and border would be outside the the width of the actual element. So let's actually test that. So I'm gonna put it inside the universal indicator selector, and the reason for that is I want it to be applied to the entire page, to all the elements. So box sizing, border box, that's the code. And the moment I see, just notice what happens. Let's see what happens here. I'm just gonna save this. And the box size reduced. The entire margin, I mean, the entire padding and the border width comes inside the 600 pixels. The actual div element actually, the div element size actually reduced to 470. So 470 plus 50 plus 15 plus 15, that gives us 600 pixels. So padding, border, and the div element in itself now adds up to 600. And that's where border box comes into play. So you probably only have to define this once, and that's it. Cool. So that was box sizing. That's a critical line to add again in all the projects you do. And then we are going to go through CSS backgrounds. So I'm going to open my Netflix page. Just going to log out. I'm going to click one of these profiles and log out quickly. Okay, you can't log out here.
I think you can't log out as a kid.
It's very interesting. My internet's a bit slow. So actually, let me just go through the concepts itself first.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can click on mine and yeah, I can quickly log out. Does it work? Yeah, sign out. Cool. While that is happening, let's go over CSS background. So CSS background is also a property in CSS that allows us to define the background of an element. So for example, a div element or any other element, you can define the background of it. And there are actually various different types of background properties. This background itself, that's the shorthand. So using the shorthand, the parameters are basically you add the color first, the image second. If you want the background to repeat again, you can add that, and then background position. Where exactly do you want to position it? But if you want to specify it separately, you can add opacity, background image, background size, background repeat again, if you want to repeat it again and again, and background position. So we're going to do that now for our Netflix landing page. So Netflix, okay, go now. Netflix has its a background image. It's weird. It says Netflix Mozambique. I'm actually in Malawi, so that's super weird. But yeah, let's go to Netflix Brunel and add a background to it. So I'm gonna add a background to the entire banner wrap because if you look at Netflix, the entire initial part, the banner wrap has the background to it, you know. So I'm gonna add that quickly to our Netflix landing page. I'm gonna separate this. That looks better. And inside styles of CSS, I'm just gonna make sure all this code is out. So we don't need this code anymore. Inside our styles of CSS, I'm gonna use a banner wrap. And inside banner wrap, I'm going to add a background right now. So I'm going to call it background. And I have to add a URL to it. So you use the CSS URL and you add the URL over here. So I'm going to use the / to find my background image. And then click BG image. You can access this from the GitHub repo as well. And then after background image, I want to ensure that it doesn't repeat, position starts from 0. Yeah, so from 0, 0, position from 0, 0, and no repeats. I'm going to save that. Awesome. So the image does appear, but not as we expect it to be. You know, like the Netflix has it as the entire page, or at least 80% of the page is covered by Netflix background. So we're going to do that now. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to define a padding and margin 0. So if you notice, there's actually padding and margin of 0, 0 there. So I'm going to add a padding of 0, margin of 0. We don't need any space around it. So padding and margin of 0. And that didn't work for some reason. Hey, there's still a padding and margin there. Okay, we'll figure that out, why that is happening, where that is coming from. Let's see. So we need to give it, let's see what the height of the Netflix landing page is. So if this is about 100% of Netflix, the background is more likely to be around 80% of it. So that's about 80 VH. So I'm going to change the height of it to 80 VH. And let's see what happens here. Okay, great. That looks better. But there's still that padding around it. Let's see what's creating that padding. Oh, okay. Right click, inspect. That's how helpful the Google Chrome inspect feature is. You can literally figure out what your errors are while coding. So I'm just gonna find out where that is coming from. Is the banner wrap? That's banner wrap. Padding margin seems 0. Body seems to have some padding and margin. So what I'm gonna do is inside universal in the universal selector, I'm gonna add a margin and padding of 0. Cool. Much like it. Cool. Now, what I'm going to do is I want to ensure that the Netflix logo is much smaller. So what I'll do is I'm going to style the logo class. Okay. So I'm going to directly go inside banner wrap and then .navbar. So that I'm basically trying to select the logo class here. And we change the height to about, Akhil, let's say 40 pixels.
Yeah, sure. Try 40 pixels.
That didn't help. That's because it has to be image on the image.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That is good. That became smaller, but the alignment is still really messy, eh? Like it's all over the place. Let me just change the color of the entire document to be white. So you can see like it's all over the place. How do we reformat this properly? And that's where CSS Flexbox comes in. So CSS Flexbox is basically a layout module. It helps us to easily give a layout to a HTML web page. And it's very flexible. There are different types of layouts. There's position, but I really like Flexbox. There's grid. Grid is quite messy. So I like using Flexbox, and we'll be building Netflix using this Flexbox properties. So Flexbox itself has various properties: the flex direction, flex wrap, justify content, align items. And how we use this, the first thing to do is make sure we define the use of Flexbox, and you do this using the display property of CSS and assign flex to it. And then once you've done that, you'll now be able to use flex direction, justify content, and align items. And so let's go over flex direction. Flex direction basically help us stack the items inside an element. Let's assume it's a div element. So we can stack them as a row, as a column reverse, or row reverse. So these are a few examples on the screen right now. So row will start from left to right, column from top to bottom, and goes on like that. And then we have justify content. Justify content basically helps us align the item. So if it's a row and you want it to align center or flex end, you can align the item inside the element accordingly. And we then have align item. So align item works exactly like justify content, but in the opposite direction. So if this is vertical, justify content is vertical, align items will be horizontal. We then have flex wrap. We're not going to be using this inside Netflix right now. I think we might be using it. So let's actually see if Netflix is using that. So what flex wrap does is, if an element overflows the screen, it will fall to the next line. So I'm going to reduce the size of this. Let's see if, and there you go. The get started button actually drops below the input form. So that's basically flex wrap. The moment of the HTML element overflows from the screen, it will go to the next line. That's how flex wrap comes into play. Cool. So I'm just gonna set this up right now. I'm gonna set up the. So let's start with the nav bar. We were actually working on the nav bar. Nav bar it has a row, and then this entire banner, this body, is a second row. The nav bar row has a Netflix logo, a sign-in button, this spaced out towards the ends. So we're gonna do that now.
Sorry, Harjot. I mean, before you continue,
Yeah.
we actually got a question in the chat. It's mainly around, in the background property. So if you just open the background property,
Yeah.
It shows like a 0, 0 on the background property.
Yeah.
So if you just open the code, and then.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Let me just explain that again. So what I did over here is I assigned this 0, 0 as a position to the background. So if I go back to my slides, the shorthand of background is background color, background image, background repeat, background position. Okay, where it might have been confusing is I switched background repeat and background position. So it doesn't really matter how you set it up. You can put position first, and then you can put no repeats. Then you can put the URL of the image. Doesn't really matter. But the 0, 0 is basically position. It means top 0, left 0, I think. Towards the top left of of the screen. That's where I want the image to start, and it should not repeat. So that's what the background property does right now. Cool. Any other questions, Akhil?
No, that's it. Someone saying that low battery on his laptop.
Oops. Thanks. Be another technical issue again. Okay. Cool. So let's get started with the LMFO. So we're actually going through the layout of the Netflix landing page, and we're gonna do the nav bar. So I'm gonna start the nav bar, and what we said is we're gonna be using Flexbox. I'm gonna define display flex first to ensure we can use Flexbox. And the default property of Flexbox is the flex direction is a row. So the moment I save this, you'll notice that sign in button comes in a row with comes on the right hand side of the Netflix logo, and this becomes a row. Now what I want to do is, firstly, I want to push the sign in button towards the right hand side of the screen, right? And how we can do that, let's go back to our slides, and let's see what property we can actually use. If we use space between, we can push it towards the left and right. So let's actually do that. So we're going to be using justify content. And space between. Cool. and that pushes the sign in button towards the right hand side. Now, if you notice, the Netflix landing page has that padding, left padding and top padding. So let's actually add that. So Akhil, any guesses on what padding they'll be using here? Let's
Let's
actually,
check out
let's
what
check it
Netflix
out.
does.
Let's check it
Yeah.
out. Yeah. So I'm gonna right click, inspect this. It's gonna increase the font, the size of the screen a bit. Inside console, no, actually elements itself. So computed, there's a padding of 8 on the logo. They have a span, they have a div. Okay, awesome. They have a padding of left and right of 56 pixels and a padding top of 20 pixels. So let's do that. So padding top, was 20 pixels. Left and right, it was 56 pixels. So padding, I can actually use shorthand for that. So I'm going to use padding shorthand. And inside the padding shorthand, the first one is the top, so 20 pixels top. And then left and right 56 pixels. So 56 pixels right, 0 pixels bottom, and then 56 pixels on the left. I'm going to save that. And awesome. So the Netflix logo actually comes really spaced well. It's almost there, almost there. I think the Netflix logo is it's a bit bigger. So I'm gonna change the size to about 37 pixels height. Let's see if it's quite similar now.
I guess it's fine.
Yeah, it's better. There's actually a padding of 7 pixels on the image itself, padding top. I'll save that. And I'm going to increase this to 45. Let's see if that works. Still much bigger. Make it about 43. Remember, we're using box sizing, so the height actually includes the padding top. And that's the reason I increased the size. So that looks exactly the same. The Netflix logo is exactly on point. And the next thing I'm going to do is I need to ensure that the Netflix logo and the sign-in button is center aligned. So what I'm going to do is I'll do align item center, and this will center align our sign-in button. And now let's see how this is looking like. This is okay. This is good. Let's actually give a layout to the rest of the text. Then we'll start working on the sign-in button. So the rest of the text is inside banner container. So I have to define banner container. And inside banner container, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a flex box, save that. Default is row, so I'm going to change that flex direction to column. And that brings it in the column format. I need to ensure that this is centered aligned, so align item center. And then justify content center. Okay, this is great. So if you noticed, we actually didn't give a height to the nav bar. So the height of the image is 43 pixels. Let's see what the height of the nav bar is, the menu area. And we probably don't have to give a height to the image, you know? So about 4 REM, 4 REM, 4 times 16. Okay, that's about 48. Hope my math is right. So I'm going to give the navbar a height of 48 pixels. Okay, that didn't actually change anything, but it helps us a bit. Actually, let me remove the height over here. Let's see what the changes are. It's much better without the height, eh? Okay, I'm gonna leave it without a height and justify content center. And if you notice, it did actually center a line vertically and horizontally. But what we didn't do is give a height and width to the banner container. So the banner container is there, it's centered a line, but vertically we haven't given it a height. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a height now. So if I give it a height of, it can't be 100% because the height of the image is actually 43 pixels, has a padding top. Banner wrap is actually 80bh. So I'm gonna do it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna calculate what 100% minus 43 pixels is. So you can use the calc function. 100% minus, remember there's that space in between. If you don't have the space, it won't work. 100 minus 43 pixels. And that pushes it down. Let's see. And that's centered aligned. That looks exactly where Netflix has positioned their texts from. Yeah. Okay, great. Now let's actually style the text inside, and then we'll jump into working on the button. So let's actually look at the code. There's the h1 tag, h2, the form element. So let's jump into h1 tag quickly. So h1 inside the banner container. So dot banner container h1. And inside h1, let's actually see what's happening here. Right click inspect, and that's about 3.125 REM. So let's actually just use the REM format. I'm gonna change the font size of the entire body to be 16 pixels. For those who don't know what REM is, one REM is basically the size of the body font. So one REM right now, we've defined 16 pixels. So one REM is basically 16 pixels. If I define it as 20 pixels, one REM is 20 pixels. So now it's 16 pixels. I'm going to give H1 the font size of 16, 3.125 REM. I'm going to save that. Let's see how that looks. Much better. Font weight of about 300. Or that 300 is a bit too light. So I'm going to change it to about 600 maybe. Looks much like Netflix. Okay. It goes to the next line after the TV. So I'm just going to give a PR there, and I'm just going to center line this. So what I can do is I can use a property called text align, and this will say center, and this will basically center align the h1 tag. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing for h2. So I'm just going to copy paste this. I want 625 REM. I'm just going to save that. Let's see. It's H2. And that is 1.625 REM, but it looks much bigger. Actually not. It's just thicker. So I'm just going to reduce that to 400. And that looks better. Text align is center. Let's see what else they have over here. They have the H3 tag. So I'm going to work on H3 now. And inside H3, let's see what they have. So right click inspect. And it's about 1.2 REM. I also see there's a padding bottom of 20 pixels. So I might as well just copy all this. And let's see how that looks. Actually, we might need some padding on top. So padding top as well. Let's see what the padding top is for these guys. They're probably not using padding top. I assume they have padding on watch anyway. That's H2. Let's see what they've done. So I'm just gonna dig into the HTML tag and see what they have used. Right click, inspect, that's the easiest. Okay, let's see. Okay, so H2 actually has a padding top and bottom, or actually a margin of top and bottom of 16 pixels. Let's actually give that. Margin top and bottom of, let's go back there, 16 pixels, left and right of 155. So that's 16, let me just confirm that again, 16 pixels, then 155 right, 16 pixels bottom, 155 on the left. So I'll save that, and that looks much better. It still seems to be a bit on top, and I think, no, actually that is fine. Akhil, what do you say? Is the positioning fine?
I think it's fine, bro.
Okay, cool. Now let's actually let's actually work on that. So the height of this input box is actually, let's see, I'm going to use a screenshot tool. That's about 60 pixels. So what I'll do is jump directly into the form. So dot banner container. Input and input, I'm gonna give it a height of 60 pixels. Okay, that is good. Let's see what the width is. So I'm going to use the screenshot tool again to check what the width is. You can copy this. It's fine. Okay, fine. And about 450 pixels. So width of 450 pixels. And much better. Okay, this is looking good. H3 actually has a banner padding bottom as well, I think. Not that. There's some sort of padding on H3. So left and right of 47, bottom of 20. H3, let's sort that out. Padding, left and right of 47.5 pixels. And bottom top 0, 47.5 pixels. Bottom of 20 pixels, and then 47.5 pixels. Okay, great. And the spacing looks much better now. Now let's work on the get started button. And we probably need to change the text color as well. So let's see what the height and width of the get started button is. Let's actually get the font right first. And then add, let's see what they've done. So they have a padding top and bottom of 8 pixels. Let's see what styles they have. Yeah, padding top and bottom of 8 pixels. That's 0.5 REM. So their 1 REM is also 16 pixels. That is great. So dot banner container, button, and the button will be padding of 0.5 REM, top and bottom, 0 left and right. That's another short form. Let's see. Okay, that is fine. Color, let's actually get the color they're using. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a color picker. So Google Chrome has a really cool color picker. So you just type color, select any color on it, press enter, go over the color, click on it, and there you go. That's your color picker. I'm just gonna click on the color I need, select the color, and just make sure I uncheck that. Color, background color actually. Is that. Let's see how that looks like. Okay, that's good. It has some sort of border to it. I'm just gonna do border none. I assume the input box also has some sort of border, so border none. Okay, great. Now let's see what else they have. They've got that, and now the button itself has some sort of padding left and right of 20 pixels. 26 pixels actually, and a border of 1. Not sure what the color is, but it has a border of 1. We'll just skip that. I'm going to change 0 to 26 pixels. Let's see how that looks. Okay, great. Might as well give it a height of 60 pixels as well. So it matches our input. Okay, that is good. Now, there's some sort of border bottom radius. I'm going to skip that. Doesn't really appear. Let's see what the font size is. What I'm interested in is the font size. Font size is 26 pixels. So inside the button, font size is 26 pixels. Great. That is good, but what is that? There's some sort of space on it. Let me remove the height. Let's see if that works. Okay, it did. Add some more padding to it. Maybe 30. Doesn't really help. Doesn't really help. Maybe 0.8 REM maybe. It's not actually centered on a line, eh? So let's see what the container is. We probably have to change the display to flex. So we are using the form tag. This is the form tag. Akhil, do you have any idea why this thing is jumping up a bit? There's that small little space. Okay, we can probably come back to it.
Maybe you need to give it a display flex.
So what should I give a display? For the form, the entire form, eh?
Yeah.
How about I remove the H3 out of this? That should be fine. Okay, that's fine. Now I'm just gonna give the form a display flex and center line, right? So the form in the banner container, form display flex, and okay, that solves the problem.
Awesome.
That looks exactly like what we need. 0.8 REM is a bit bigger than what we need. 0.7 is exactly what we need.
Awesome.
Oh, this is actually our landing page.
Looks the same. Huh?
Looks exactly the same. The email, let's add some padding because I see there's some sort of padding. The text color is also like grayish. Let's see what that color is. I'm just gonna use a color picker again. I'm gonna pick the color, go over it, get that color, and change the color to required. Add some padding left of about, let's say that's about 8 pixels. Awesome, that looks good. That looks really good. Just gonna close this. Let's see, how's this looking, guys? That's what we've created. That's the Netflix landing page. there's probably some touch-ups that we might have to do with the height and width and all that stuff. Also, that another thing to note is our font size, font type is not exactly the same, so there might be slight differences. But that is our Netflix, the banner wrap. So that's the banner of it, of Netflix. Cool. Next thing to work on is actually the sign in button. Very simple and it's quite quick as well. Cool. So the banner, the button, let's see where the button is. The sign in button is actually an A tag. So I'm going to give it a class of BTN so we can actually style it. And let's go there, btn.btn. And in the button itself, the text color is already white. So I'm going to change the background color to red. It's not exactly red, it's that color of that button. So I'm just going to copy the same color. One thing when doing web designing is just ensure there's consistencies. If you're using a red button and it's not very important, just use the same color throughout. It's just some concepts of UX and UI. And then we have to add some border radius to it because the button has some border radius, about 3 pixels. So border radius, 3 pixels. And let's see how that looks. Okay, now let's add some padding to it. So about 50 pixels. Let's see. Let's actually see what padding it is. From the previous clone we did, I do remember it was 50 pixels. So the padding is 17. Okay. So 17 and margin has a margin of 8. Okay, cool. We can do that. That's not a problem. So padding, top and bottom 0, left and right 17 pixels. Cool. That's fine. Oh, top and bottom is actually 7 pixels. That looks great, guys. Looks amazing. Text decoration, I'm just going to remove the text decoration from it. Text decoration helps us remove all the unnecessary underlining and all that happening. So text decoration none. You can actually specify this on the universal selector. So I'm just going to do that. And there you go. That's the sign in button. It's that simple, guys. So simple to make a button and actually style it. And if you're using Bootstrap, that's another library. It's just literally one line and your button just appears. Okay, so we now have the navbar ready. We have the H1 elements, H2, H3. We have the form ready. Now, if you notice, Netflix actually has that, that layer behind it. What do you call this? The opacity?
Overlay.
Or the overlay,
Yeah.
yes. It actually has the overlay behind it, a blackish overlay. So, but to add that, we have to learn another HTML concept called position. So Akhil is actually going to take you through that, and he's going to actually start the second section, teach you how position works in HTML, and then we can jump on to actually make that overlay. Cool.
Awesome,
Akhil, man, over to you.
Yeah, please push your code, dude, so that I can pull it.
Yeah, cool.
And also enable screen share.
Yeah. Done.
Awesome. Awesome.
Just hold on. I'm sorting out Git commit. Okay, still pushing. Still a lot of changes that have been made, I guess. Or the internet is slow.
Yeah, I think the internet's slow, eh?
Still pushing. I was gonna cancel this and start the process again, maybe.
Yeah, go for it. Let me keep the slides ready in the meantime.
Why don't you go over the position while I do this? Yeah. Guys, the moment I push it, you can then download the new code and start where I left from.
Awesome, guys. I'm just going to. Oh yeah, you guys can see my screen, right? It says trying to connect. I'm not sure if we're. Are we connect? Yeah, yeah. I'm unmuted. And oops. Just trying to load my YouTube. Guys, I think there's something wrong with the internet here. But I really can't see what people are saying right now. It says reconnecting. Are we still streaming?
Not sure. We are supposed to be streaming.
I think there's some issue here. Like our whole connectivity just dropped. Data. It seems to be working locally.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, guys. I think there's a few internet issues.
Malawi, welcome to Malawi, Akhil.
Thank you, Harjo. Thank you. It's been an interesting experience in Malawi, guys. Yeah. So I guess we can continue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome, guys. So let's carry on, right? So basically, what Harjot was talking about. So Harjot, just push your code in the meantime.
Yeah.
But basically, what Harjot was talking about was position, right? So the position element. But before talking about the position element, let me actually share my screen, guys. Before actually talking about the position element, it's really critical to understand a concept in HTML called, actually it's a CSS thing, it's called elements flow, right? So basically anything you see in an HTML document, right, has a certain flow, okay? Meaning that there's different ways the elements appear on the page. So it starts from the top and then it goes to the bottom, right? So if I put divs on top of the other, how it'll appear is quite intuitive, right? It's just going to appear one on top of the other, right? So basically, that is called the flow. And there are ways we can disrupt this flow, right? And I think to bring this into a more practical aspect, we actually have an example on the Netflix landing page, right? So on the Netflix landing page, we actually have this section over here where it says enjoy your TV, and it has like an image. So you can see that this is like an image. It's just a normal image, and then inside the image there's a video, right? Now, like, just think about this for a second. How would we actually go about placing these elements? Because like if we put an image first, right, and then we put a video, it'll appear one on top of the other according to our elements flow, right? Because elements flow one on top of the other, right? But with like, how did Netflix actually get this to happen? That's where the property position comes in. We can disrupt this flow and we can put elements one relative to another. We can put like the video here, like in the code, it still appears under the one under the other, but actually it's like visually when you look at it, based on how we style it, it appears one on top of the other, right? So that's how the CSS position comes in, right? So let's actually get to building this, right? So I think before we talk about the position property in detail, let's actually go ahead and continue with building this part over here. You know, just review a few concepts, what Harjot talked about in terms of flex. Harjot, were you able to push your code?
Yeah, I'll push the code.
So I'm just going to pull the code now. Awesome, I've pulled the code and it should update the page over here.
Do you have the GitHub link by any chance? Is it in the?
Yeah, the GitHub link is, it's actually in the chat. It's also right here. So yeah, I can just drop it in the chat for you. Awesome, guys. So yeah, I'm just looking at the page right now. Harjot, this looks kind of broken, like I think because of the screen device sizes.
No.
Yeah.
Display flex. Do you want to change that to?
Unless I think something happened in the merge.
The form has a flex direction of column, I think. You have to change that. Change the flex direction of the form. That will solve the problem.
The flex direction of the form should be row, hey?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. So I'm just going to look at the form. So guys, what you're witnessing right now is the real-time bug. I'm not sure how this happened because it was working fine.
It's still working fine on my computer.
It's still working fine. Do you mind just like committing your code again and pushing it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really strange, guys. Also here, this padding top seems to be missing.
Okay, I'm gonna solve
Maybe that's a small issue. Yeah, so I mean, basically, while we wait for Harjot to just, you know, make that little modification, let's actually talk about the next part, right? So the next part is on the Netflix landing page is basically this enjoy your TV part, right? And this is where, you know, we're giving some information, and then we also have the video and TV on the side over here, right? And essentially what's happening is like straight off the bat, like using what we've learned with Flex, right? The items are appearing side by side, right? Meaning that we have two divs over here. How I see it, there's a div on the left, which is like this information container. And then there's a div on the right, which is like the TV container, and it has the TV inside, the image, TV, and whatnot inside it, right? So basically, we will be using Flex over here as well. So, I mean, let me actually pull Harjot's code again, said it pushed it. Okay. Let's see if that fixed the issue. Still not fixed, really strange. What I'll do is I'll just continue with the info container part. Don't stress about this, guys. Like, please let us know in the chat, like, you know, download the code, pull it, see if you're having an issue, but don't stress about it. We'll rectify that, okay? So basically, just moving on and talking about the styles, right? Basically, what we have to do now is we have to do the next part, right? The info container, where we say enjoy your TV and all that kind of information, right? So how we'll do it is similar to like how we had a banner container on top here. We're just going to have something called an info container, okay? And then inside the info container, just opening the Netflix site over here, we have some information on the left side and we have some information on the right side, okay? So how we'll do it is we'll have some information on the left side. I'm going to call it info. And then on the right side, we're just going to call it TV container, okay? And then inside the info, we have these different elements, okay? So I'm just going to, so these are the old elements. Basically, what you can do is you can copy that, enjoy your TV, and then you can have watch on smart TVs, PlayStation, Xbox, and so on. So let me actually inspect this. I don't think they're actually using a paragraph tag from what I remember. I think they're actually using, let's see. Yep, they're using an H2 tag, right? So
What I'll do is I'll just change this tag into H2. Change to H2. Remove these strong tags. We don't need this stuff anymore. Remove the italics tags. Don't need that anymore. Awesome, and we're good to go. So what I'll do is I'll also just remove this down part. We don't need that right now. Create some real estate over here. And yeah, so we basically have the info container over here where it says enjoy your TV, watch information on your smart TV, and then we have this image over here, right? So I'm just gonna inspect the image, see if we can get some sort of link, or we can actually copy the image address directly, right? So if I copy the image address and then inside TV container, I actually create the image, right? So I mean, before creating the image, what I like to do is my personal opinion. I like to create a div for every image I create. Might seem a little redundant, but in some cases it's helped for me. So what I'll do is I'll just call this TV image. It might actually be totally unnecessary here. Let's try to do it without it, right? I'm just going to say image, put that source I got over there by copying the image, save it. And see what we get. It's gonna look horrible right now, just bear with me. Yeah, and you can see that all the text is already in white, which is awesome. But yeah, you can see that this is actually it's just a TV image, right? There's no video in this. What we need to do is we need to also get the video now, right? So that brings us to another concept actually. And the concept is basically talking about the video element. And lucky for us, HTML provides us a video element which we can use to display videos on tables, on web pages, right? So this is what it looks like. The snippet of code over here, you can actually get it straight from the Netflix landing page. So I'm just going to swipe over right now, open the Netflix tab. And in the Netflix tab, I'm just going to inspect the video, and I should be able to access, they have a div. So, let's see how Netflix, basically, they just have an image here. They don't even use a div. And then inside, they have a separate div that holds the video, right? So this is basically the video div that I was talking about, okay? So I'm just going to copy this element. You can copy the element. Copy element. And then I'm just going to paste the element. It's actually just a video element, right? But before pasting it, what I'll do is I'll just create a div called video. Similar to how Netflix did it. Save it. And this is what our video element looks like. And let's see what we get. It's still going to look really messy because we've not done display flex or anything. But now you can see, using the CSS elements flow, the elements are appearing one on top of the other, right? And we can rearrange this flow using flex actually, right? So if we just starting the info container briefly, so we can say info container. And you can give it a display, display of flex, okay? If I give it a display of flex, you'll see that everything appears side by side. Let me also just give it a background color, background of black. Yeah, and then you can see we have our H1 there, and then we have our H2 here. Obviously, we need to restyle the sizing and stuff, because we've given it, we've given the overall file font size of 16 pixels. So we can obviously change the size and stuff. That's not a problem. But you can see that the video still appears one on top of the other, right? Let's just go on and make a few more modifications to this. Let's actually use, let's actually make the video, this text over here, appear in the center, right? So in flex, right, when we display flex, the default flex direction is row. So we don't have to explicitly say flex direction row. Now, if we want to actually center these items vertically, right? So vertically, we have a div and we want the items to be in the center. What we'll do is we're just going to say justify content. Actually, it's align items. Align items center. Okay. So what that will do is it's just going to put everything in the center. It's going to try to push everything in the center. Okay. So yeah, that's basically this part. We need to obviously fix this, but I want to just cover the concept now, right? The CSS position property. Okay. So now it's really important for you guys to know that there's different kinds of properties. And as I said, the purpose of the position property is to disrupt this flow so that you can control the flow of elements, place them according to how we want them to appear, right? So all elements by default have a position of static, meaning that that's how they appear, like just in the flow, like one on top of the other, right? But we can control the flow using other properties such as position relative, right? So with position relative, elements relative to its original position in the element flow. So this does not affect other elements in the flow. So what this means is that we can actually make positions, like change the positions of elements by giving it this property. So if we just go to the video over here, let's actually give the video class a style, and we say position relative, right? It's not going to do anything right now. It's just going to be normal, right? And then I'm going to say top 20 pixels, right? So what that means is that it's going to be 20 pixels from the top, right? So it found the previous element it was relative to, and it gave it 20 pixels from the top. And then you can see that it's just slightly below over here, right? Which is, really cool because you can overlap elements using position relative. You can change the position completely, okay? Now, it's really important to know that when you use position relative, position absolute, actually, sorry, let me just cover position absolute first before explaining that. But yeah, basically that's the position relative, right? So similar to position relative, there's something else known as position absolute, right? So what position absolute does is that it totally takes the element out of the normal flow. Like what relative does is that it looks at the original position of the element that we've given position relative, and then to that original position, it adjusts it. So for example, in the video over here, we had an original position, right? And in the video, we gave it a position of relative, and then we said 20 pixels from the top. So 20 pixels from the top of what? It's actually from the top of the previous position of the video, right? So that's why it's overlapping like this, right? So it basically moved it 20 pixels from the top of the previous position of the video, and it's appearing like this. So this doesn't disrupt the flow of elements in the document, right? But now if we use like something like absolute, this totally takes the element out of the normal flow, right? So the element will be positioned in relation to the first ancestor that is not static or that is not in the natural flow. What that means is that whenever we want to use position absolute, it does not work unless, I mean, it will work, but if you want to position, give it a fixed position, like relative to something, in the sense that, how in relative we said 20 pixels from the old position, in absolute, it'll be 20 pixels. If we do position absolute and say top of 20 pixels, it'll be 20 pixels from the previous element that is not static, meaning that if it has a relative property, right? So we can change the position of a parent to relative. So over here, what first ancestor means is that it just means the parent element. Okay, the parent element is basically known as the first ancestor. Okay, so cool. So now let's actually try and implement position absolute, right? So we basically, if we make this position absolute, let's see what happens. We save it, and then you can see that it's totally disappeared, right? But actually it's not disappeared. It's actually at the top of the document over here, and it's 20 pixels from the top of the document. That's because it is making this element absolute to the entire document, right? Because we've not given a parent element a position of relative, right? So now if I come over here and an info container, I give this a position, because the info container over here is the parent of the TV container, right? So if I actually give TV container a position of relative, you see that we appear at the top now of the TV container, right? Now, if I actually, this is info container, right? So if I remove that, let me just remove that. And let me just give TV container a position of relative, right? So the reason I'm giving TV container or a position of relative is because this video class over here is actually a child of TV container, right? So you can see that it kind of still looks like it's in the same position, but basically now it's actually relative to the TV container, which is what we want, right? Awesome. So that's basically how we use, this property, right? The the whole displaying of elements one on top of the other. Now let's actually work on getting this TV, this video inside the TV, right? So a cool thing that we could do is in TV container, we can actually give this some styles, right? So we can firstly give it a display of flex, right? So if we give it a display of flex, it won't make a difference right now. But I think if we align item center and stuff, it might actually give a difference. So if we align items center, actually it's not making a difference in TV container because I basically want the image and the TV to kind of be in one line right now. So that's basically what I'm trying to do. Maybe if I justify content center, you can see that it's in one line right now, right? So now video, if I basically just do, you know, from the top, if I just say 20% from the top, let's see what we get. Oops. So if I just said 20% from the top, it moved it down, right? So this is an arbitrary number, guys. So I didn't just like, you know, I literally just randomly thought of 20% and I moved it down like that. So now you can see that the video is actually appearing on top of our TV, which is like kind of good because that's what we want, right? It looks like it's in the same position, but you can see that Netflix actually has a frame, a TV frame. We want that TV frame to appear around this TV, right? So what I'll do now is we got to get into another concept called Z-index, okay? So yeah, guys, I mean, the position property, guys, is extremely useful. It disrupts the normal flow using position absolute. And then there's also position fixed, right? If you use position fixed, let me show you how it's helpful. Actually, let's apply position fixed to the nav bar, and you'll be, this is like a proper example of how we could use position fixed, right? So with position fixed, you can see that now Netflix is always stuck on the top, right? And that's what position fixed does, right? It fixes the position, the element on the page, okay? Just going to remove that. Oops, I think I opened Photoshop by mistake. But anyways, I wanted to get into something called the Z-index property because let me explain the problem. So in this situation over here, we want the image that actually has a frame to appear on top of the video, right? Now, in order to fix this issue, we have to use something called Z-index because the layering, how elements are stacked is different, right? Because if you remember correctly, in our code, actually, we put the image before the video, right? And then we put the video on top of the image. So basically, that's why the video is appearing on top of the image, right? Now, if we use Z-index, we can change the layering of these elements and make elements appear stack one on top of the other, right? And that is using Z-index. The Z-index property specifies the stack order of an element. An element with greater stack order is always in front of an element with a lower stack order. Z-index only works on positioned elements, right? So that's why knowing position is critical. If it's position absolute, position relative, position fixed, or position sticky. Position sticky, guys, we won't cover, but as the name suggests, like it gets, like elements can stay stuck on the screen. So if I scroll down to a certain point, like if I have an element that I want to be stuck on the screen, I'll scroll down and then it'll stick to the screen. So that's what position sticky does, kind of similar to fixed in a way. So let's use Z-index here. So as this example, as the slides told us, it's basically the stack order, right? It allows us to define the stack order. So what I'll do is I'm just going to say .tv container, and then the image inside the TV container, I want to give it a Z-index of 1, right? So what that does is the default is normally 0, right? When I say 1, I want this image to appear on top of the video, and that's what it looks like. So that's how we basically literally just put the video inside the TV just by knowing a simple concept. Hey, like Harjot, the code got fixed here. I don't know what happened.
That is so weird.
Yeah. Okay, anyways, yeah. Basically, you can see that this has come together, right? Now, let's just actually just do some basic fixing over here of the font sizes. I think it's actually quite similar to this and this sizes. So I'm just going to, maybe we could reuse those styles. Maybe the font weights might be different. Let me see how Netflix has done it. So I'm just going to right click, inspect. So you can see the font size is 3.125 REM. REM, guys, is basically a way of specifying units, right? So like how we use percentage, we can use REM. REM is basically relative to the root element, right? The root element. So the root element in our code actually has 16 pixels, right? So 3 REM would be 48 pixels. So that's 16 times 3. Anyways, I'm just going to give this, I'm going to give similar styles over here. I'm just going to apply this to all H1s, all H2s. But I think I'm just going to remove text align center. Also margin, I'm going to remove that. And I think for H1, I'll just put H1 and H2s together. And I'm going to remove text align center. Let's see what that looks like. Awesome, guys. So that actually looks quite similar, but there's a lot of like space. I mean, it's like right at the end over here. We want there to be some space, right? So if we just see how they've done the div, they've given some padding, right? They've given the whole thing some padding, the whole div some padding. So let's actually use the box model as Harjot went through, and you can see that there's a padding of top and bottom of 70 pixels and right and left of 45 pixels, right? So I'll do the same thing in info container. I'm just going to do padding of top 70 pixels, top, bottom 70 pixels, right, left 45 pixels, right? Awesome, and that's kind of similar, okay? And then I think the inner elements actually give their own margin, which is really weird. It's really not necessary. They gave a margin of 61 pixels. So I guess what I could do is inside info container, I could also just give a margin over here of just left and right 61 pixels. Oh, sorry guys, that's actually incorrect because what they have done is they have an inner div over here and they've added that to the inner div. So instead of doing that, what I'll do is I'll just increase the padding right and left. I'm just going to change this to about 110 pixels. Yeah, so that might be a bit too much, maybe like 100 pixels. I think that's much better. Okay, so that's basically this section, right? And there's a little gray line that appears on the Netflix landing page over here. And that's nothing but border, right? So basically what we need to do is on the info container, we can use something called border top. Border top, and then I can give it a border 8 pixels, solid, and then it's a grayish color, right? And you can see this is what it looks like. Okay. Awesome, guys. So that brings us to the end of this info container section. We did cover the Z-index property, the position property. And now what I'll do is I'm going to hand over to Harjot to cover the CSS after selector. Okay. And let me stop sharing. Let me actually push my code first. Awesome. So I'm just going to stop sharing my code.
Awesome, man. That looks really good. Looks exactly like Netflix. I'm just going to share my screen and then we can get started to complete our Netflix landing page.
So Harjot, I've pushed my code. Just pull it and see if you can do the thing.
So I'm just going to get full. Okay, great. Cool. There you go. That was so quick. So we have the Netflix banner, the banner ready. We have the second section ready as well. The other three sections look quite similar. So like you can just literally just duplicate and change that image, change the text. It's quite similar. So what I'm going to do now is work on the overlay. How exactly did the overlay come up? So now that we know the position, there's actually a concept. So we spoke about the different types of selectors that CSS has, and one of them was like a pseudo selector, and the after selector is actually part of that. So what after selector does is it takes an element. There's like a CSS styling example banner wrap. You add a CSS styling, and then if you put the after selector on it, it will apply the CSS styling and then apply the styles in the after selector. I think it's much more simpler to understand that when we're doing it in code. So I'm going to jump right into that. Just coming back to this is a pseudo selector, and what it does, it gets the content. So there's a parameter, a property in CSS called content. So we actually use content, and what the after selector does is it adds all the content on top of the previous CSS. So let's actually, let me actually give you an example. Much easier to explain that way. So let's go back here. Let's go right back to banner wrap. So that's the banner wrap actually has the image. So banner wrap, we actually added a background color, a background of 0 of this image. We added padding of 0, a height of 80bh. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the after selector. So I'm going to add an after selector to the banner wrap itself, use 2 colons, and then use after, and that's your after selector. But now you are supposed to be adding a content, some content to it, you know. So so we have to use the property content. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the content property and define that as empty, because we just want to add an overlay on top of the background image. We don't really want to add any sort of content to it. So I'm just going to keep that empty. And how we can actually create an overlay is using a background. You know, we can add like a background to it. So I'm gonna add a background. I'll use the RGBA format to get that background color. So RGBA, it's basically red, blue, and green, and last A is basically alpha. Alpha stands for the opacity. So I'm going to define the black color. So black is 0, 0, 0, and opacity, I'm going to set it as 0.7. It's out of 1. So I want it to be 0.7. But if you notice, it will still not appear because we added it into the after selector. It's sitting somewhere behind the image. It's not really, like, we don't know where exactly it is. So let's actually change the position of this. So I'm gonna add a position relative to the banner wrap because I want this overlay to be relative to the banner wrap itself. The after selector to be relative to the original banner wrap. So position relative and position absolute for the after selector banner wrap. Now I've set that up, I need to set the position. I want top to be 0, top left, that's where we usually start. And still doesn't appear. And does anyone know the reason for it? Maybe take 5 seconds to guess why this issue is happening. Akhil just went over some concept that actually helps us solve this problem. So 5 seconds to guess what the problem could be. Drop it in the chat. I'm going to continue now, so you can start typing. Cool. The reason this is happening is because the background color is actually sitting behind the background image. And we haven't actually defined the height and width of the banner wrap. So it's actually sitting behind, and the height and width has not been defined. So let's actually solve that. So let's actually add the heights of 100%. width of 100%. I want the height and width to be 100% of the container. And that adds the overlay. But now it's actually not at the back of the image, it's actually right in front of the image. We don't want that. We want the Netflix logo to appear first, like in front of the overlay. And we can solve that using Z index. So if I add a Z index of 1, so I'm going to add a Z index of 1 to banner wrap. And the after selector, I'll add a net Z index of -1. What this does is it pushes all the content of the banner wrap to be right in front. So we added a negative Z index to the banner wrap after content, which means the background color is supposed to be behind, and then the content of banner wrap, which is the logo, the everything else, needs to be in front of the pseudo selector banner wrap. So that's why we've set the Z index to be positive of the banner wrap content. All the content comes in front. I set the Z index -1 so that the background color, the overlay, goes behind the content of banner wrap, and the background image sits right at the end. So background image is the last component in the element flow. And that's how we actually create the overlay. Okay, do you want to add anything into the Z index concept? Does anyone have any question? I know it can be a bit confusing, but
Yeah,
this
guys,
is
any questions?
But this is our banner, our banner basically of Netflix. That's how similar does it look like? Obviously, the background image changes. Like Netflix changes the background image every single day. We've done so many clones, and they just keep on doing the same thing again and again. So you can forget the image, but apart from that, how accurate is this, guys? Tell us in the chat how accurate our landing page is looking like. We've got the navbar ready, the banner ready, the first section ready, guys. How legit does this thing look? Like if you show this to someone, how does it look? I'd be tripped out of this, eh?
Yeah, guys, I think this is a great start for you guys. Obviously, it's not possible to cover the whole thing, but I think there's just one more thing I want to cover before we close this off. So, Arjot, if you just push your code up, I just want to go through one last thing, and it's just mainly around lists, specifically around lists, and how we can actually use lists to change the styling, right? And also, we'll just deploy everything. And just show you guys how easy it is to also deploy this thing on Netlify, right? So I think that's just something really important. Yeah. So Rajat, have you pushed your code?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen. And I'm just going to pull the code now. And I've pulled the code successfully, and you guys can see that the overlay actually appears now, right? So that's quite accurate, right? Now let's actually just do the one last thing I wanted to show you guys is in the footer, you can see that Netflix actually uses text, this text over here, and it's actually nothing but a list, right? And using the list, the elements are separated into 4 columns, right? So I just wanted to briefly go through that, and it's just 2 properties I want to go through is over here, right? What I'll do first is I'm just going to create a quick footer class, right? And then inside the footer class, I'm just going to add a list, right? I'm not going to do like the exact styling, guys. I just want to show you guys how you can actually style these lists, right? And yeah, so I think everything is appearing, but it's kind of appearing in a similar with white text. So I'm just going to implement this in the footer. Actually, let me change that class name to footer. And yeah, so you can see that this is basically the list that we have, right? And firstly, it's white color. So what you can do is you can actually, remove, like you can change how we're styling these elements, right? So the first thing I want to show you guys is inside footer, you can do UL. UL stands for unordered list, and then you can say text. Actually, I think you have to do that directly for the LI element, because we want to basically say text decoration underline, right? So text decoration underline basically means you're able to click on it when it's hovered on. But if we do text decoration none, right? It still appears. I think we have to do LI. So specifically for LI elements. So I think it's list. Actually, this is incorrect.
List style type.
Yeah. So I think for UL, we have to do list style type, and then say none. And then you can see that the list has actually disappeared, right? The bullet points have actually disappeared. And then on each element, right, that's where we'd apply. On each LI, right, we'll say text decoration. Actually, we'll say cursor pointer. Okay. So every time we hover over any list item, it appears like that, right? Oops, I think I closed my code. And what I wanted to show you guys, sorry guys, a little admin here. But yeah, what I want to show you guys is over here, you can do text decoration underline. Okay, so what text decoration underline does is it makes everything underlined, right? So similar to doing text decoration underline and using exactly what Harjot did earlier, using a pseudo selector, right, where you used after. Instead of that, what we'll do here is we're just going to say on, I think it's just hover, right?
Yeah.
And it's just 1 colon. And we want the cursor to still be pointer and underline, okay? So what this does is on hover, right? We can actually see a little underline there. Now, if you want to separate everything into 4 columns, if you're wondering about that, what normally I would recommend is we could just close the tag specifically like this, right? And then we could open new tags for UL, because I mean the columns are not going to change, right? It's going to be like this, okay? So this is one way of doing it. There's many ways of doing it, okay? And yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to cover, guys, with regards to text underline and how you can reorganize lists. It's really cool how you can play around with this stuff. And then I think the last thing is to actually deploy the code. Netlify. I am going to log in. And Harjot, what do you say? We use the drag and drop,
bro.
Let's do the drag and drop method. Yeah, Harjot, are we live?
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Sorry about that, guys. I've been having quite a few internet issues. But anyways, I'm just going to refresh this page. we're going to deploy this right now.
Share screen.
Yeah, let me share my screen. Really strange. Netlify is not opening. Let me just open it again. So I'm just going to log in. Please load. Yeah, guys, so this is actually our product. Don't get fooled. It looks kind of similar, quite similar to Netflix. You know, obviously there's a few modifications that can be made, such as the padding here. You know, the footer can be worked on, but this is a good place to get started. You can reuse a lot of the concepts that have been taught and build yourself a proper Netlify app. Netlify is taking ages to load. I'm not sure what the issue is. And yes, we are here. What I'll do now is, what you can do is if you scroll down, it says team overview. I think if we scroll down, we can actually...
I think they changed the format. Right?
Yeah, they changed the format, guys.
They changed,
oh no, I think it's in sites. It's in sites,
yeah.
right? So if you scroll down, if you open the sites page, you can see I have a lot of sites. Basically over here, you can drag and drop your project. So what I'll do is I'm going to drag and drop Netflix DSC Brunel over here. And our project should be live soon. So that's it, guys. That's how simple it is to deploy. As you can see, it's super, super easy. The link is up. You know, what we can do, the last thing is we can change the, we can change what this site is actually called. So I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's in general. You go to general, you can change the site name, you can change it to like, you know, Zayo, Netflix, you know, and if I hit save, that basically becomes the new link. If I click on that link, you can see that the product is up. It's up online, guys. This is what it looks like. And I can actually go ahead and share this with the chat. Awesome. So yeah, guys, that brings us to the end of this session. I hope that was really helpful, guys. We are spot on, finishing on time. And yeah, Harjot, do you have anything, any last additions?
I think Netflix 9 is looking very accurate, eh, guys? If there are any other questions, please drop them in the chat right now. We're gonna stick around for a bit. Like anything from the beginning, any concept that you'd like us to review, let us know. Otherwise, if you're watching this recording, contact us on Instagram, DM us. We'll reply to you if you have any questions with regards to any concepts. We're happy to review that.
I must say this was an interesting experience, guys. You know, tuning in from Malawi over here. And yeah, I hope you took away a lot from this workshop. You know, hit us up if you're ever stuck with anything, and we're happy to help. Cheers, guys. It's been good.